What is up? Today is Saturday, and I'm super stoked because I've been wanting to try something all week. Earlier in the week, on November 12th, Qwen 2.5 Coder Series dropped their 32 billion parameter model, and I'm super stoked about this because they claim it competes very favorable with GPT-4o and just under the capabilities of Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which, as you probably all know, is the preferred model that I've been using in my videos and to do my own personal coding. The most exciting thing about this model is that it is open source. It's actually licensed under the Apache 2.0 license, as you can see here. This means that you can download the model and run it locally using Ollama or any other tool. If you're interested in learning more about this model, I will leave a link to this blog post below. It covers a lot about the model and a lot about performance of the model compared to other state-of-the-art models. Moving over to the Aider leaderboards, you can see that Qwen 2.5 Coder takes the 5th spot. This falls only behind the latest release and the prior release of Claude Sonnet, 0.1 Preview, and Claude Haiku. Qwen scores a 73.7, where the latest version of Sonnet is scoring 84.2, and GPT-4o is at 72.9. In this video, I'm going to use the application requirements I used for my last video to build an automobile maintenance log application, but I'm going to use the new Qwen 2.5 Coder 32 billion instruct model. If after testing the model, I decide that it's something that I want to continue to use, I will download it and host it locally, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and use OpenRouter to host it. Because the model is open source and free, hosting it on OpenRouter is actually extremely inexpensive. You can see here that they are charging 18 cents per million input tokens and output tokens as well. If you compare that to Claude Sonnet on OpenRouter, you can see that it's $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. Once I had everything set up in OpenRouter, I was able to configure Cursor AI as well as Aider to use the new model. If that's something you're interested in, please let me know in the comments and I'll create a video. If you didn't get a chance to check out my last video, in that video I was able to build this application using Claude Sonnet 3.5, Cursor AI, Flowbite, and Tailwind. This application allows you to add new vehicles, and view vehicles, edit vehicles, delete vehicles, and also schedule upcoming services as well as add previous services. Here we are in a fresh Rails 8.0.0 application that I've set up. I've set it up to use PropShaft with import maps and SQLite as the database. I've also set up Flowbite, which if you've watched my prior videos, you know is my component framework of choice, and of course Tailwind. I have also set up Rails 8 authentication, and finally I configured the application to use the new morph turbo refresh method. I am using Cursor AI as my editor of choice, which I highly recommend, and as you can see over here in the Cursor chat window, I am using the Qwen 2.5 Coder 32 billion instruct model. I will be using a combination of the Cursor chat window and the Cursor composer. In the requirements folder here, you can see I've copied over the product design specification that I used for the video I created last week. And you can see it has a great overview of the project, along with project constraints, the goals and functional requirements for the project, user interface design, and technical requirements, as well as testing requirements and a constraints summary. I'm going to be using this product design specification to create the entire application in one shot using what I call the all-in strategy, but it's also known as one-shot strategy. Cursor Composer will be allowed to generate all of the files that it thinks it needs to satisfy the requirements in the specification. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and commit all of the changes that we have to this point so that if I need to back out, I will be able to easily. One final step before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and verify that our project is set up correctly and that we have all of the necessary CSS and JavaScript files loading in the browser. As you can see here, I'm able to load the login, the Rails authentication login screen, and it looks like we have Flowbite, Turbo, Stimulus, Flowbite CSS, Tailwind. It looks like everything we are going to need is here. As part of the project setup, I copied over a cursor rules file that basically goes over all of the technologies that I'm using on my projects, including Rails 8, Flowbite, as I mentioned, Tailwind CSS. And this is used as guidance for the AI to make sure that it follows our guidelines and uses the proper versions of the libraries. To test this and ensure that the rules are going to be followed, I'm going to go ahead and ask Qwen. You can see I have selected here in the chat window what it knows about the projects. As you can see here, it actually calls out our cursor rules file and says based on that, it knows that we're working on a Rails 8 project. Again, the proper version of Flowbite, Tailwind CSS for styling, and as well as some of the other features like Rubocop, style guide, HTML, CSS, etc. Okay, I'm going to start by opening up Composer by clicking on Control and then I, and then I'm going to open it up in the control panel mode because this gives me more real estate to look at any of the changes that were being applied, and it makes it easier for me to decide if I want to accept the changes or not. Now I need to begin adding files and folders into our context. I'm going to start by adding all of the models. I'm going to add all of the controllers. I'm going to add all of the migrations. I'm going to add all of the views. I'm going to add our markdown file. And for now, that's what I'm going to go with. And then I'm going to paste in a prompt. And this prompt says, please generate a new application for tracking automobile maintenance based on the requirements and technical guidance outlined in maintenance log pds.md. Use Flowbite version 2.52 components for tables, buttons, forms, dialogues, and notifications. Assume Flowbite and Tailwind are already set up in the project, so no additional configuration is required. Provide migrations, models, controllers, views, appropriately configured routes, and anything else you believe I need. If any of the functional or technical requirements cannot be met, notify me and specify the issue. And then I'm going to hit enter and we're going to let it start generating our app. Okay, as you can see, using Qwen 2.5 Coder 32B Instruct, you can see we've generated a lot of files here, starting with our migrations, moving to our models and then controllers, and then finally the view files for all of those. I see the modification to the routes file. I don't see any tests generated at this point, but we can go back and add the tests once we get all of the functional requirements implemented. It's kind of interesting to go through and see the responses that you get back from the model as it generates the code, kind of gives you some additional guidance and it lets you know what it's doing, which is pretty cool. You can see it's pretty verbose, which is okay. But it also summarizes the changes that it made at the very bottom here, which is kind of cool, and tells you exactly what it did, which is just pretty much what I just described, creating migrations, models, controllers, views, and modifying the routes file. And it says you can go ahead and accept all of these by clicking on this button, all of the changes, or you can review them one at a time. In this particular case, I don't see any harm that it has done here. It hasn't modified any of our existing files other than the routes file, and it would be pretty easy to revert that if there were problems there. But at a quick glance, it looks like everything's there. At least, in theory, whether it works or not, I guess that we have to determine that. But I'm just going to go ahead and accept all of those changes at this point in time. Now, the next thing I need to do is run those migrations. And it looks like they were successful. And I'm going to go ahead and restart Rails. And then we're going to go over to the browser and refresh this page, see if we get any errors. And we do. We get an error here. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this error and see if we can get our chat to help us out with this. We need to give it some context, so I'm going to give it the models folder. That should have our current and our session model as well as all of our new models. I'm going to give it the controllers. I'm just going to give it all of the views, see how it does with that. Oh yeah, we will need to give it the routes file. And that should be good enough. Let's see what it can do here. Okay, it's giving us a couple of options here. It's saying I could remove a manual route from the routes file, or restrict the routes created by resources. I'm just going to get rid of the manual one if the resources is taking care of it. So let's apply that change. Okay, and then we'll go back to the browser. And try to refresh the URL. And it looks like we're getting an invalid URL. And I think this again was a route change. Looks like it's looking for a session URL, but the route here for sessions was changed to include the specific actions rather than just being a single resource. So I'm just going to change that back. Okay, now it doesn't like the sessions, so let's make that session, and we are back. Then I'm going to go ahead and create a user and then come back and we'll log in. Okay, it doesn't find a vehicles for our instance of user, so let's go back and look at our user model. And it isn't a relationship with the user. I'm going to look at our vehicle. I'm not seeing where we have this set up as a relationship on the vehicle. Let's check our user model. Yeah, we don't have this relationship set up on our user. So we're going to go back and look at the error again. And we're going to copy this and come back over and paste it here. Okay, so yeah, that's exactly what it is. It wants me to go ahead and add the relationship to our user. Let's apply that. Dependent destroy. seems reasonable. And then down below that, we have another migration. So let's generate this first so that we get a timestamp on it. And then we'll apply. Yes. Okay, I like that. Now we're going to run our migration. And we are migrated. Let's go back and see what we get. No view template associated with vehicles. I thought that was kind of strange because we don't have an index for vehicles, and I'm not sure why. So let's go ahead and copy this and see if it can generate that index file. Okay, it's creating a table, which is good. We'll see what that looks like. Okay, just going over what it did. Let's go ahead and apply that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Not too bad. And wow, interesting. It wants a serial number, kind of interesting. I think we would actually want one or the other. I don't think we need both. Let's put one in here just to get past it. Okay, and we have a view page. Let's edit that. The edit looks okay. I'm going to change this to a 5.5. Okay, tune your, okay, so it wants a, it doesn't want a decimal there. So yeah, that looks pretty good. We have our vehicle. We have show, edit, and destroy back to home, which is this page. So I don't think we need that link, but that's okay. Show, edit, destroy. So we have vehicles. Now I'm not sure exactly how to add service to these vehicles. So maybe I'll have to look at the routes and decide how we do that. I would like to see this improved a little bit. The actions over here a little bit smashed together. I think we could use some space there, maybe even some icons. I think would be a big improvement there. But this is a good start. Going back to this, I'm going to just close everything. Getting a little crowded. And then I'm going to look at our routes file again. And it looks like we have vehicles and then service histories under the vehicles. So we should have a vehicles 1, service histories. Okay, new. Okay, so we do have a new form. I'm not sure how we're going to see this, but it doesn't look terribly bad. So I'm going to add one for yesterday. Oil change. Mileage is 43,000. Okay, now we have a service history here, but we don't have any way of showing it unless it's, yeah, okay, so it does show some service history details there, which is kind of interesting. So this is our service history, okay, and then these are our vehicles. So how do I get to the service histories? I'm not seeing a way to get to service histories without manually entering the URL, so that's something we'll need to fix. Okay, I'm going to remove that back to home button from the vehicles index page. And the next, I'm going to have it improve the vehicle show page so that it includes a link to the service history and future services pages. I'm going to ask it why it's there to make it look a little nicer, add some spacing, improve some formatting. So let's see what it does with that. Okay, yeah, this looks pretty good. The formatting is a lot better. Still a little difficult to read, but not too bad. And then we have our edit vehicle here and back, which goes to the right place. We have back to vehicles. We can view the service histories. Back to vehicles, a little padding here would be nice. And again, replacing a lot of these little actions, links with icons would be good too. Future services. Can we add a future service? Add it way into the future. And let's say tire rotation. I don't know what the reminder is doing at this point, but we do have a new future service request there. So everything appears to be working. I'm going to go back and I'm going to have it add a Flowbite nav bar to the top of the layout page so that we have a login and log out button and maybe a logo over on the left-hand side. You can see already that it's wanting to add in the Flowbite CSS and JavaScript, which we already have configured. So I'm not sure if it has the application.html .erb file in its context, but I'm going to add it again and ask it to modify it just to make sure it knows. This looks like it's just going to modify what I already have. Let's go ahead and open that file. Wait for the changes to finish. Okay, it is done. Let's go ahead and apply this. And it looks like the changes are just limited to the nav bar. So I think we're okay applying that. Okay, it looks like we have a header, has a logout button like I asked. We have two links and these should probably go to the same place. So it's probably not needed. Probably just get away with one or the other. Looks like we do have an icon over in the corner. It doesn't look like a car or an automobile, but it is an icon. And it looks like we do have something here, but once again, it's white on white, so we can't see it. Let's test the logout link. Looks like that works. Go to vehicles and make sure we are logged out, and we are. Go back to the login, which of course is the screen we're already on. I'm going to quickly fix this because that's an easy one. Let's see if it still has the context of our application HTML ERB file. It looks like it does, and interesting. So it's not going to regenerate the whole class, which it tends to do, or the whole file, I mean, which it usually tends to do. So let's see if that fixed that. Okay, that looks a little better. Not the most beautiful looking design so far, but it is functional. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here. I've done enough with Qwen 2.5 to form an opinion about it. And I'm going to say it's probably about where they say it's at. Honestly, I'm not nearly as impressed with it as I am Claude Sonnet 3.5. But then again, this is a free model, and it's come a long way. I think it's a pretty good solid option. I'm not sure how well it does with frameworks that are more mainstream like React or Python. But if any of you have tried it, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I'd be interested to hear what your experience was like with it. But overall, I think it's a pretty good option and a model that I'm going to keep my eye on in the future. I may use this model for some of my code generation because of the low cost, but I think overall my main go-to is going to continue to be Claude Sonnet for now. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please subscribe to my channel, or leave a comment below, or like the video if you thought it was good. I appreciate it, and we will see you in the next one.